So, I updated my Jumper T16 transmitter. I flashed it to OpenTX.
Welcome to OpenTX.
It's only a nightly build, of course, because currently only, as of the time I'm making this video, only nightly builds are available. There isn't a full release of OpenTX that supports the Jumper T16 available yet. And perhaps more significantly, certainly a lot more work, I have flashed the internal multi module. So now you can see the internal multi module is at v.1.2.1.85, which means I've actually got a version on that has a bootloader on it, which now in future I should be able to load it. I should be able to support flashing the firmware of the internal multi module using OpenTX Companion. But for this initial update I had to use all this stuff, which I can tell you by my standards was not pleasant. Some people say, oh well, it's nothing, but for me it was a bit of a struggle. This is a little USB to COM converter that I bought from Banggood. This part here is a cable that I bought from Banggood, it's like a 5-pin connector cable used, I believe, for Arduino amongst other things, and then the other bit is just a little piece, an old piece off an old servo cable. I did not make a video of doing this. It was necessary to solder. Well, for a start, this thing came. These pins didn't come on it, so I had to solder all these joints, and I'm not really a soldering person. It was a tricky thing for me to do. I had to buy a little cheap soldering iron to do it. I looked online and there were videos saying, oh well, it's no good using cheap soldering irons, you have to buy a $1,000 soldering station, but I'm not going to buy a $1,000 soldering station to do this, so I bought an $8 soldering iron from a surplus store and managed to do it. That was to solder these first I had to solder these pins here onto this board. They give you the pins for the board, but they come separate from the board, they're not on the board. Then I had to carefully solder this cable to this other cable so that that end connects to the board inside the T16, and this end connects to here. Yes, like that basically. So the brown there, these things are marked. You probably can't read them like on this video though. But the ground connects to ground, and then the red, the middle one, the red one, connects to the one that's labeled transmitter, and the yellow or orange one connects to the one that's marked receiver. There's a page on RC Groups that tells you how to do this, and there's a good video by TMac, which I'll try and put a link to in the comments below, which shows you how to do this. Couple of minor points. I would suggest definitely view the TMac video as well as reading the post on RC Groups, because he's much clearer about how you have to solder these wires than the post on RC Groups. The post on RC Groups kind of just talks about it by color, but the way that they come on these cables is not always the same. Sometimes they seem to come one way around, sometimes they seem to come another. So the one on RC Groups, you have to be careful you look at this connector the right way up. See, there's one way where you can sort of see metal, and there's another way where all you see is plastic. So look at it with the metal, where the side where you can see metal on top, and the top two wires are the two you have to join together, which in the case of the post on RC Groups are the red and black ones, but in the case of mine are the yellow and green ones, and in the case of TMac's video they were the yellow and green ones as well. But you have to be very careful about that, and they don't really make that terribly clear in the RC Groups post. You have to go by the order on this connector, not by the colors, because the colors sometimes come differently. So look at it with the, as I say, with the side where you can see the metal up. The top two connectors are the ones that get joined together, and then the next three, in order going down, the next three get connected in order to, counting from the top here, when you put the print the right way up, they get connected to the third, well, how many pins are there here? 6, right? So yes, so they get connected to the 3rd, 4th and 5th pins on this thing. So that's one thing you've got to watch out for. Another thing you've got to watch out for is there is a minor note in the RC Group's post and in TMac thing that you have to install drivers for this, but it's only a very minor note. They just say, oh, you have to install drivers. Well, you do. It won't do a darn thing if you don't install the drivers and get it working properly. Again, I'll put a link in the comments to where I got the drivers for it from. When you buy it from Banggood, they make no mention of where you might get drivers from. So I managed to find the drivers, and this of course assumes that you get the same one as me. You can get other ones. There are other types of USB to COM converters, in which case you'd have to get the appropriate drivers for those, and you also have to make sure they're operating on 3.3 volts, which this one is. Part of the reason I bought this is because this is a, what is it, CP102, I forget the exact reference. This is not stuff I deal with very often, and I don't think it actually says anywhere on it, but it's a type that always operates in 3.3 volts. You don't have to, some of them you have to change a jumper or something else to switch whether it's on 3.3 or 5 volts. This type always operates on 3.3 volts. So you have to get the drivers for this. Another problem I had is this has a mini USB connector on it, I think it's a mini type, I forget whether it's a type A or a type B. It's a common type of connector. The problem is the first two, it doesn't come with a USB cable to connect it to your computer, and the first two USB cables I tried didn't work. They worked in the sense that they connected, they plugged into it, and they made the little red light on it come on, but they did not result in any COM port appearing on my computer. If when you plug the cable into this and you plug the other end into your computer, you don't get a dingly device detected thing on your computer, and you don't get, and when you go and look in Device Manager, you don't see a COM port. When you go and look in Device Manager, you should see a COM port if this is working properly when you plug it in. If you don't see a COM port when you plug it in, then it's not working properly. And the first two USB cables, they didn't give you one. I tried various ones I had lying around the house. The first two I tried did not work. I suspect perhaps because they were just intending for charging devices, maybe, and they didn't have all the connectors connected up. Who knows? I'm just guessing now. Finally, I used a USB cable I had sitting around from a camera, and that did work. I had a little 4K sport camera. The cable I had with that plugging into this, when I plugged that into this and into the computer, then yes, I got the dingly sound, and when I looked in Device Manager I saw COM4. So then I knew I was on the right track. But until you've got the COM port, there's no point trying to go on to the next stage. You have to install the drivers for this right and make sure you've got the COM port. Then, then you plug this into here. Then you have to take the transmitter all apart, of course. Then you've got to, again, that's covered in TMac's video and whatever. You've got to take the rubber grips off. There's 4 rubber grips, 2 on each side, and you have to take all of them off, because you have to take these off so you can get at the screws, and you have to take those off so you can, because the back won't come off the front, because otherwise they overlap the back and the front till they won't come off. And you have to take the top plate off and take the battery out and take the whole back off. Then, with the back off, you have to reconnect the battery to the transmitter, power it on, have this connected up, connected to the computer, and then run the Flash Multi software to flash the firmware in the Internal Multi module. And to be perfectly honest, I was amazed it actually worked, but it did actually work.
Welcome to OpenTX.
As you can see,
Throttle warning. Throttle hold. Low rates.
Because we do, in fact, it's hard to do this, but there we go. We do, in fact, now have v.1.2.1.85, and it has fixed the problems with DSMX. The original version, v.1.2.1.51, would not fly DSMX at all, sensibly. You could bind DSMX devices. Well, I haven't flown a DSMX fixed wing because I was in the house today, but I've flown 2 little DSMX helicopters today, and they both flew okay, and they wouldn't fly with the original firmware at all. They would bind, but they wouldn't fly at all, really. So tomorrow I'll probably try and go to indoor flying and see if I can fly some DSMX fixed wing, because that was the main thing that didn't work with the original firmware. It was DSM2 seemed to work, but DSMX didn't. Anyway, if you have any additional questions, please ask. I will try and post links in the comments below to a video showing how to do the whole process and where I got the drivers from, and if there's other things you need, post in the comments and I'll try and respond.